Oh, yeah.
5,000, I'll be
And,
impressed.
Yeah.
and of course, he didn't have the same enthusiasm,
We good?
as his mother.
Everyone ready?
Switching this mic. I wanna-
Everyone ready?
yeah. I'm switching, so I don't
Okay.
have to be harsh.
All right, it's 5:32, and I'm calling to order the CRA Governing Board meeting Monday, November 1st. Our first order of business, approval of the minutes of August 16th and September 9th. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? A second, a second? Okay, hearing no discussion, I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Okay, our next item, we have resolution number 140-21, amending the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget to reflect carry forward from 2021. Mr. Cobb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, the board is asked to approve a resolution approving, or adopt a resolution approving the carry forwards from fiscal year 2021 into fiscal year 22. These projects are projects that were funded by the CRA Board in fiscal year 2021. They are still in progress, and so the idea is to bring those projects forward from fiscal year 2021 and place them in the fiscal year 21-22 budget so that you're not expending the monies that were already allocated to other things in the fiscal year 21-22 budget. That way we keep the continuity with the project. And so tonight it's recommended that the board adopt resolution number 140-21.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, any discussion? Okay, everyone's happy. Call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next item, we don't really necessarily have to vote on this, but I need direction to call a special meeting on the 29th. The Development Services staff informs us that Urban 3 will be ready with Phase 2 of their Economic Impact Analysis Study. So do we have consensus to set a meeting for 5:30 PM, November 29th?
Yes, please.
Everyone, we good with that?
Yes.
Okay, I call the meeting with concurrence from the board. And the last thing we have is-
Actually, I have a question on that one. I mean, did we want to,
Make it
don't-
one, a couple days later,
uh,
something?
well, do we want to wait till the new board is put together? I mean,
So I
in case
believe the
something
staff
happens
had a
during
particular
selection.
reason for that date, because Urban 3 is making the presentation. So that's why it was that magic date.
Okay.
So, I mean, certainly if you want to entertain doing another day, we'd have to get with the staff and see if they could reschedule it.
okay.
Do they need any action taken, or is it just a presentation?
It's just a presentation.
Okay.
Leave it there.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. The last item we have is an update from Mr. Cobb on the CRA Executive Director situation. Mr. Cobb?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you remember, back in September of 2020, the beginning of last fiscal year, the board asked the staff to look into a request for proposals for the executive director position. The board had a discussion about maybe only doing a 3-month work order, and then they also had another discussion, well, it may be better to do a 1-year work order, and then let's work through the RFQ process. We issued the RFQ over the summer, and we received 0 responses to the first RFQ. One of the good things about the vendor league software is that it allows us, anytime someone downloads the RFQ, we can tell who's shown an interest. So our purchasing administrator, she went in and contacted those companies and said, what were some of the things that was wrong with our RFQ? Why didn't you respond? You pulled it down. Why didn't you respond? And the biggest issue was staffing. They really didn't have the staffing to take on a new CRA. And we advertised on Bing Link. We also advertised on the Florida Redevelopment Association, which is where most of these companies are, that deal with redevelopment. So, but a couple of them gave us some input and said, well, if you tweaked it here and tweaked it there, required less time at the city, those types of things that we can submit. So we did that, and then we resubmitted the RFQ. We got one response. And it was an engineering firm, much like Mr. Jones's firm, except that they really had no CRA experience. Though they were responsive in that they gave us all the required documents, but they had no, they didn't meet the experience requirements. They could go in, they could handle infrastructure improvements. They had the engineering expertise for that. But from the standpoint of having actual experience administering a CRA, they really didn't have any. Well, during this entire process, one of the things that I was looking at, I kept noticing that more and more CRA board agendas were actually initiated by the staff, and that Mr. Jones was basically being the mouthpiece, and he was presenting the items, and he was preparing the minutes after the city clerk did all the time stamping of the meeting for him. So one of the things that I started looking at was, with our new workflow process in our agenda software, Mr. Jones was taking a lesser and lesser role as we went through the year. And especially like even during the budget process. We had a meeting with him back in March, and then pretty much staff took it from there. So in looking at all that, I went back to the directors, and I started talking with, Public Works and Development Services, Finance. Those were the primary ones, Recreation and Parks. So they've now gotten involved with Solary Park, as well as with the mural project that we've been doing. And so I talked to them about it, and they felt like with the workflow process and with the level of work that's going on right now, that we as a staff could take over the administration and treat and serve the board much like we serve city council, is what we looked at. We also went and talked with the folks in Sanford. Now in Sanford, they've got 3 folks in their economic development department that you might say work part-time for the CRA. Their CRA is completely different from ours, but they're getting closer to the end of theirs. And so they're doing a lot of the infrastructure stuff's already done. The stuff we're working on, they've already done it. They're more visiting the CRA membership and looking at things, how they affect them, what can they do to assist them directly. But the thing we looked at, in helping us, was that they started telling us, well, here's the stuff we do. And we got to thinking, well, we're already doing a lot of that stuff. And so that's why we said, well, we could take it over. And we wanted to bring to you tonight to see if you concurred with that if you would allow us to take it over. Now, one of the things that we look at too is that as the CRA progresses, and if we get to a point where the workload isn't something that we can handle, then obviously we're going to bring another alternative to you. We may ask you to go back out for an RFQ. We may ask you to help fund a position on the city staff that would be directly involved with the CRA. One of the things that I also looked at is that if we ever decide to transition the board to like a Sanford board that is not the city council plus 2 county representatives, but a completely separate board where the agency acts on its own, then yes, we would then come to you and say it may be time for city staff to step out. But as we are structured right now, we believe that the city staff can continue to serve this board, utilizing our own workflow program. Public Works will continue to look at the infrastructure programs. Planning, if you remember, Development Services and Planning brought forward the downtown master plan. City Clerk's office will handle the minutes and the agendas and communication with the board. And so administration will take on more of what Mr. Jones was doing. Finance will continue to serve as they already have. So we would recommend to you that you allow us to take that on. There's going to be some things we'll have to do in a local agreement between the CRA board and the city itself. We may have to do some things to the bylaws as well. But those are things that we can bring to you. But I wanted to at least bring this forward, give you an update of the experience that we had, give you the input that we got from the other firms. One of the things about it is that Mr. Jones's firm did not apply either time. So we did not, even though the city's new purchasing policy would have allowed me to issue him a work order for another year, we did not do that because we wanted to come to you first. That is an option. An option is to go back to Mr. Jones and ask if he would accept another work order. Another option is to go back out and do another RFQ. We could do that as well. And then the third option, which is what we would recommend, is to allow us to, as I feel, continue to serve this board and to provide you with your agendas and bring forward the initiatives and work with you to carry forward our CRA. And I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so if we could just get, if anyone's got any thoughts or questions for Mr. Cobb, and we'll start with you.
Well,
Britton?
did you get any explanation for why Little John didn't?
I haven't heard one, no,
Respond?
sir.
Yeah.
I haven't heard one. Now, I had a conversation about a year and a half ago with one of their principals, and they were reevaluating all of what they called their small accounts. And of course, our account only $45,000.
Yeah.
And so we were a small account. So I could see where they would look at our account as one not being something that they wanted to continue with, but that was the only conversation that I had personally with them.
Okay, is there a mechanism to pay the salaries of the city folks for their time out of the CRA?
That is one of the things that I've asked Mr. Hall to help us with. We're actually trying to look at a way that it could be almost like with hiring Mr. Jones's firm, where it would be an interagency transfer, and that we're hoping that we'll be able to do it on a lump sum, and so that at least for this budget year, that we would be able to do that working within this budget. But if we find out that we've got to start tracking all the time, then we'll do that. And that's part of those amendments to the interagency, interlocal agreement that between the CRA and the city that we'll have to do.
Okay, and I guess my final comment is I'm actually encouraged you're going to take this on, but I don't want to hear any excuses in the future that you're spread too thin and you can't get other stuff done.
Right.
So let's make sure we get our jobs done. This is an extra. If we got the capacity, that's fine. But if we start letting things fall through the cracks or things get delayed and take longer than they should, maybe we need to go back and get some help at least on a surge basis.
Councilwoman Smith?
I agree with that, and I think I talked with Mr. Cobb, and if it does get to a point where the staff is just not able to handle it, then there's a possibility that we could hire someone using CRA funds. Is that my understanding, Mr. Cobb?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm content with that if that's what we do.
Mrs. Mayor?
I wish we'd have done it a few years ago. This is a great move.
So do we feel with the city staff doing it, it's going to be more than what we allocated for Mr. Jones's firm? Or we don't know?
If we're tracking our hours, there's a good possibility. I did an analysis of it a few years ago, and we were a little bit more than he was at that time. But it really would, when you start to look at all the different hands that come into play, that a project might initiate in Public Works, and then as it goes through the process, there's finances looking at it, HR is looking at it, administration's looking at it. So you start, those hours start to add up. And yes, there is a possibility. But when you think about that, you've got the $45,000 that's for administration, then you've got the $10,000 that's already allocated for finance. There's $55,000 here. My estimate when I looked at it a couple of years ago, I think I was around 47. So I think between the two, we should be okay.
Okay. Right. Sam, as Mr. Smith said, as long as, we can handle it without letting other things fall through the cracks,
Right.
yeah, I would be in agreement.
Councilman Powell?
I'm good with that.
I will share with everyone, it was evident to me as the chair trying to get a hold of agendas, seeing delays, that perhaps SNME or their heart wasn't in it anymore, so to speak. So I saw the burden falling on city staff already, and actually did reach out to someone who had expressed interest in taking this job on. And they told me, I don't remember the exact numbers, but let's just say it was more than double the figure we're now spending.
Oh, it's six figures.
What?
It was over 100.
It was six figures, more than double. And their perception was we needed our hands held to tell us what projects to do. And I think the partnership between the city and the CRA has been pretty seamless as far as funding initiatives that are of common interest, and didn't feel that we needed to spend money on administration versus, paving and things, engineering, real stuff. So I think Mr. Britton is right. If we start taking on a whole bunch of projects, this might change in the future. But I think it's a good opportunity to see how it goes this year. Hopefully, Mr. Hall can come up with something where we just transfer the 10 plus the 45 to the city, and we'll see it maybe at the next meeting, and not the meeting where we have the presentation, but after that. So if we have no more discussion, does anyone have any new business? I'm supposed to announce before I adjourn the meeting, future meeting dates, but I don't have them. Do you happen to know? Future
Well,
meeting dates?
obviously, you have the one you just scheduled for the 29th.
Well, other than the 29th.
The next
I
one that,
don't know.
the next one that Mr. Jones had recommended to you was December 6th.
Okay.
And then I think he actually had you set up for next year doing monthly meetings. Now, I didn't know if you want to do monthly meetings next year. It would be, you could look at December 6th, but I think then whatever the, January 3rd, I think is the first
Isn't
Monday in
December
January.
6th the day that the new council takes their seats?
Yes.
Perhaps, if everyone concurs, we'll skip that one, come back in January. Do you know of any business that's imperative?
I don't think there is. I don't think there's.
Is everyone okay with that? All right, so we will not have the December 6th meeting. We'll come back for the first meeting in January. And with that, unless there's anyone else with anything to say, we are adjourned. I'll get